All right, let's play a little sound and motion.
Small minds, just other people. Gossip. Good minds discuss events. Great minds discuss ideas.
It flows, and I'm here with Aiden Marquez. How do you pronounce? I am terrible at pronouncing names. I've known you a long time. It's just Marquez, right?
Yeah, just Marquez.
You know, it'd be funny if you were like, no, Judah, it's Chavez.
There actually is a Chavez in my family, so they're not far off.
Yeah, in my family too. Why I bring it up is because one of the things I did with my dad, my cousin, or actually my second cousin, my mom's cousin got on. Her name is Chavez, Chavez, and I was like, Dad, how do we pronounce it? Because here in the South, it's Chavez or something like that. But it's Chavez, you know. Anyway, so I'm here with Aiden, and Aiden and I go way back. He was one of my first. I think actually you have the very first video on Guideway Studios, back when it was Guideway Studios plural, and it was like this interesting like little just meme kind of video. And
yeah, a lot of experimentation.
Had you done video before that?
No, you were the very first exposure I had to that. You know, me being a child, I was always like, I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. And you kind of, you gave me the very first taste of what that'd be like. So
that's awesome. Well, that makes me happy because you have become quite prolific in your creative endeavors. So Aiden is one of the most intelligent guys I've ever mentored. I guess you could call it. You were a mentoree, right? We came through.
I'd say so, yeah.
Chess scholars, and then we just sort of became a family friend and mentor, and yeah, I think it's interesting to have you on now and see like, what are you, like 6'7" or something?
No, that'd be my brother. He's still taller than me. I'm somewhere around 5'9", give or take. So
okay, well, like when did we first meet? When you were like 9?
it probably had to have been around there because it was all the way back when I lived in Westchester, and that was 7 years ago now. So
Okay,
and we knew each other for years before then. So yeah, probably around then.
Okay. Well, proud to see how much you've grown and matured, and I want to talk to you a little bit about expertise. But before we do, don't let me forget. Want to do the simultaneous science, something I like to do with people I have on RambleSource in order to sort of get on the same page with the same breath. So if you can, with me, and the audience can do it, blow all your air out. Take the giantest breath you've ever taken. Hold it. And release. It just feels a lot better to do that and get started that way.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Some people find it awkward, and that's even better. Well, so Aiden, you've gotten to the point now where you are starting to think more in terms of, I feel like you're in the stage of your life where you're thinking more about what am I going to be, right? Which maybe is more of an American idea, like a Western idea.
Yeah.
Because I think, I don't know, like in past times, I think men would think, well, who am I based on who I come from rather than who I'm going to be? You know, we've become like you said, you grew up as a little kid, and I grew up as a grown kid, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be a YouTube star,"
Yeah.
and it's like we live in this society where the emphasis is on being famous instead of being just starting with the little things we're good at and working on those and being successful in terms of our craft, in terms of who we are, in terms of making ourselves better for just the people around us. And so that's one thing I'm trying to explore on my journey now is how to sort of claw back the time or effort I've put into being successful and more like just kind of reaching out to the people I care about, like you and other friends, just and connecting and getting your guys' wisdom and experience on life. And so one of those areas I think is really important is expertise. Where do you so I've for those of you guys who don't know, Aiden has been on. He's done a. Well, you tell us about your the things that you've done.
So I'm a recent high school graduate. As of June this year, I graduated out of Lake Forest High School. Um, Obviously, since I was being mentored by you, stop motion has been one of my biggest pastimes and hobbies. Obviously, back then I only had like a little 3DS camera and it was not even passable as fluid motion. Whereas now, once my brother moved out, I took over his old room and I've got a whole studio set up for working on these projects of mine. So it's obviously been that leap from doing something stupid as an 8-year-old to carrying it on now to that I'm 19.
Mm.
But my work with stop motion has been so self-guided. Like, even though I took animation 1, 2, 3, and then honors versions of those animation courses at my high school, all the way up to animation honors 8,
Yeah.
so much of it was self-guided because even my teachers were just like, you know what, we're going to cut you loose. Go work on your projects. Just show us like progress reports on what you're doing. Like, I did all of my animation work at home, and that class during the day just became a study hall. So the recognition of your own talent in that sense was nice because they were just kind of like, you know what, he's going to go off and do his own thing anyways. We might as well just let him. And that was really validating.
Yeah.
But yeah, so stop motion as a whole, it's just been something that I've been plugging away at on the side for maybe a decade now. It's hard to say, but yeah, that's my hobby. So I've
Probably a
sprung
little
off.
over.
Yeah.
Well, and then you gave a TED talk about it, right?
Yeah, I did. I use stop motion kind of as like the cornerstone of my argument. My argument, I really wanted to be more broad spectrum because if I just went up there and started talking about onion skins and lighting, I don't think I would have captured my audience as well as I did. I really wanted to make my argument more something that people could take and apply to themselves, irregardless of what they're into. Because my biggest argument during that TED talk was mostly just how important it is to find something that you're passionate about and letting that pull you out of like the day-to-day drudgery. Because so many people, they go through the motions, they wake up, they shower, they go to work, they come home crabby, and then they just have to do it all the next day. Um, but what I think is so invigorating about just having something that you're passionate about, whether that be cooking, some sort of art form, maybe it's writing, reading, anything like that, is that it gives you something to kind of break up the day and break that cycle a little bit. It really gives you something like in your own two hands that you can have and make your own.
Yeah.
And when I think in our society and our day-to-day lives that we're so like systematic, like my sophomore and junior years of high school, I was just rolling through everything day by day because the schedules were so repetitive. And nothing really broke that up. So I kind of really wanted to tell people like it's up to you to find the enjoyment in life. You kind of have to do that for yourself. And that was my main argument. I just used my point of reference as stop motion because obviously that's what I've done for myself.
I love it. And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on and talk about expertise. Is I guess I don't know if expertise is the right word, but that's just the word I wanted to use to sort of focus us. But creativity really, and maybe that's something we can talk about. Is like, where does creativity and expertise, where does the Venn diagram overlap? And or are they the same thing? Because I think there is something. So to me, for me, you're right on target with that. With the idea of having something that draws you out of the daily judger. Actually, I think of. Have you ever read Calvin and Hobbes comics? Do you know Calvin and Hobbes?
My mom was really into them, so I've read a few of them from her, but I haven't I wouldn't say I'm an expert in Calvin.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, your mom and I are the same age. Your mom, dad, and I are probably about the same age. And we grew up with Calvin and Hobbes was like it took over the comic. Like you don't know because you probably have you ever seen a newspaper? Like newspapers all we used
Yeah.
to have. We didn't have internet, and in the newspaper was a comic section, and like had all these comics.
I remember I grew up reading Garfield. I would
Okay.
specifically take the newspaper out our driveway, find Garfield, and I'd throw it to the side.
Well, you started your intellectual life early, right? How old were you when you did that? You must have been really young.
I had to have been at least 5 or 6 because there's no
Mm.
way that I was doing that in 5th grade, I'll tell you that. But
Well, so that reminds me of a comic that Calvin and Hobbes. It's just one frame. No, I guess it's several frames. Let me see if I can find it. Calvin and Hobbes comic, and it basically had several frames, and it just showed like how a 9-year-old would see life, and but it was so. Let's see. It was so indicative of life in general that I think people just thought, man, this is good because I guess the one frame that I remember is being is like cows being herded like cows. I can't find it, but there he it was just Calvin sort of walking along with other cows, going to school, being herded by the teachers were the shepherds or whatever, and it it really like I think from a young age I thought I do not, to your point, I do not want to be, I don't want to live life like that, start the
Mhm.
process all over again the next day. There's a lot of little YouTube shorts and comics and stuff that show that like drudgery process that repeats itself,
Yeah.
stuck in the continuum. And you say that you were in high school were kind of stuck in that.
Yeah, it was about my, sophomore year of, high school. It was probably a combination of how dreadful, e-learning was, having to do this cycle
Mm.
in my own house. But, a combination of that just with, high school itself. I'm a good student. I graduated with a 4.92 GPA, but by my sophomore year, I was still I'm absolutely not going to college. And it's kind of just that part of, like you said, being herded along with the other cows. I
Mm.
just knew that wasn't for me.
Mm.
I think there's a bit too much of a push for college,
Mm.
but and I don't. That's a whole other discussion.
Well, no, I
Um,
absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. I told you, I've been trying to convince my kids not to go to college. So I don't mind if they go to college once they, if they really figure out like I need to get training in this certain. But I feel like a lot of college is just a social club, for the most
mhm.
part. And it was for me. I mean, I loved it in terms of the social aspect. That's where I met my wife, and and it's where most people meet their spouse, and it is hard to. I mean, there is an aspect of that I have to think about, but it's like also how much of it is engineered that way. It's like, well, maybe I'd like to go to more ancient or venerable processes where my kids meet their spouse, if they want to get married, meet their spouse in like a more family context, instead of going way out there, meeting somebody way out there and bringing them back, or staying out there and I never see them again. There's all kinds of little things that I think are broken in our society when it comes to education, and specifically college, which we could go on, and maybe college plays into that. But let's get back to the idea. So of expertise. Sorry, I go on too many rabbit trails, but
No, I think it's great to follow him.
but I do believe so. Something you said about creativity. Oh, so I believe that God made us in His image, and part of that. And somebody brought it up in one of my interviews recently. I think it was Todd, but said that God made us to part of the image of God is our creativity. And I really strongly believe that. I've believed that for a long time, that creating something, and this guy said he created us out of nothing. And I don't really know, that's what the Bible says, and I'll go with that. But there's part of it where it's like God created us out of Him, and there wasn't nothing before us. There was God, and he created us out of Him. And I just believe that is when people talk about magic and talk about power and stuff like that, I really think that the energy for excitement and adventure really comes down to being creative. What do you feel about? How do you feel about that?
I'd say so, yeah. I think people who are creative tend to I think they appreciate the little things, if that makes sense. Like they can see something that most people, they see things in a different way. I'm not the most creative person. Obviously, I'm creative to an extent, with how I practice that in my art forms, but there are people who are leaps and bounds far more creative than even I am. And the way that everyone perceives things is so intricate and different. It kind of comes down to life experience, I feel. Whereas based on what you know about things kind of propels how you can see them and interact with them. Like for me, obviously I've been working a lot on my own films. So now when I watch movies, I really break down like how'd they do that? Or why did they make that creative decision? Whereas other people can just like sit face through The Godfather or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. So parenthetically, has that sort of ruined your movie viewing, or has it enhanced or ruined your movie viewing experience?
My senior year of high school, I took a film class with a man named Mr. Lubliner. He was actually like a Hollywood writer. And in his later years, he was just like, you know what, I want to teach this to kids. And the things that he said on our first day in class is that this class is going to ruin movies for you. And the big thing that he taught us really the whole semester was this idea of text and subtext. There's this like standard movie driven thing that in the beginning of every movie you're introduced to like the protagonist's text, and it's going to be a complete lie of like who they are. And then throughout the movie they'll do this subtext where it reveals who they really are, but it's like the opposite of who they were at the beginning. They're going to make like a conflict and it's going to return them to their text, and then they're going to go back to their subtext by the end of the movie and express their true selves. And that has been so true for every movie that I've seen since I took that class. And he is absolutely right. You will predict the ending at least 80% of time if
Really?
you really put your head to it.
Well, that's the hero story, right? Like it's
Hmm.
the character changes, it grows throughout the story, right? Like in the third act, they meet some kind of insurmountable conflict. They beat it. They win in the end, typically, and they become a completely different person, usually for the good.
Yeah. Like even my humanities teacher, Mr. Finley, he was like, "I'm going to give you an archetype and you tell me who this is. They're someone with powers, their parents are dead, they live with a relative, and they come into some sort of wise, experienced mentor figure." And the entire class was like, "Spider-Man, Batman, Luke
Harry
Skywalker."
Potter.
Yep.
Why is it, do you think, we glom onto that particular story?
And that was one of the interesting things that that humanities class actually touched on was like somewhere out there is the first iteration of that kind of archetype,
Mm-hmm.
and we have no idea necessarily what it is.
Mm.
But I think it's interesting that that sort of framework has been so successful. I mean,
Mm.
the four characters that we just named, you wouldn't find a single person in our society who doesn't know who those are.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, my first thought is to go back to Christ, to Jesus Christ, and think about like. By the way, where are you where is term in terms of religion? Are you religious? I don't really know. I don't really.
Growing up, my parents never made a big push on religion. I knew my dad was a man of faith, and then my mom was fairly agnostic, I believe.
Mm,
So I kind of grew up with my, they allowed me to take my own approach to it,
mm,
which
mm,
I love. That's absolutely how I'm going to raise my kids.
mm,
Um, but I had like a phase where I was pretty, closed minded, and I would like say that I was an atheist at that point in time.
mm,
And the further I've gotten on in life, I'm pretty suited in saying that I'm agnostic myself because I believe that while I personally cannot prove that God exists with my two hands, I think saying that there is no God is just as closed minded and
mm,
irresponsible as saying, like, I can't disprove it, but I can't prove it. But if I
mm,
were to put my faith in it, I think I would rather believe that there is something out there
mm.
because leaving existence up to cosmic chance and life as we know it is just a bit too built on nothing, if
Well,
that makes sense.
it takes too much faith.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to make a lot of leaps with your brain. Whereas people say, oh, believing in a God, how could you like? That takes way too much. Like, you have to connect too many dots. I'm like, yeah, try believing that we come from two little things bumping up next to each other in the cosmos. Well, okay, well, I appreciate that, and I don't know. As a mentor, I always wanted to keep kind of like your parents, keep the options open. I don't know if I ever talked about my faith. Did I?
Um, I remember you briefly mentioning your parents were Mormon, right?
No, I know
Oh,
they're
shoot.
Christian.
Well, in that case, no, I guess not. I've
um,
always known that you were your family has like a very close-knit religious bond, but that's about the extent. We don't
okay.
think we ever got into the specifics.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and see, that's the other thing is that like, well, I mean, we could go into a lot about schooling and indoctrination, but what I wanted to
A
kind
lot
of
of that.
end on is kind of bring it back to expertise and what. So, how do you define expertise, like in your life?
Expertise is kind of an interesting thing, in my opinion.
Mm,
Um, because while I do stop motion, I do a lot of other things. I've
right.
been weightlifting for like 3 years now.
Oh.
And I see all these people who, they go on social media and they post them flexing in the mirror. And I'm like, what are you doing? I can lift more than you. But I don't say anything about that. And to me, expertise is kind of this thing where like, if it's okay to be proud of your journey and your progress, but I don't think anyone deserves to be like boastful until you're literally the pinnacle of that thing.
Mm.
Because unless
Can
you
somebody be the pinnacle though of that thing? Is there such thing as one expert?
I'd argue no, because
Mm.
perfection itself is such an abstract human concept.
Mm.
Like, even if you were one of the most renowned painters or artists in the world, you'll never be able to, like, expertly grasp that individual concept of it. Because even if you were the best artist in the world, there's going to be some teenager in their bedroom halfway across the world who has a different art style than you, and that individual is the only person who can be deemed the expert in that style. You can replicate it all you want, but you'll never have the individual connection with it.
And I think that's a great way of putting it. And so that piques my curiosity as we're talking about it, makes me think, can anybody be an expert? And then I think, well, what about being an expert? Like, what does it take personally? I'm starting to think for me. And so my question to you is, what does it take for you personally to reach expertise to where you feel like I am? Uh, so is expert level, is expertise something that is external, or can it be internal to where you say like I have gotten to the place where I believe I am an expert at this, or I am, or is this a spectrum? What do you think?
If we're talking like true expertise to the point of pure perfection, I don't think anyone will be able to obtain that because
Right.
we as humans are always learning and growing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even Gordon Ramsay goes on like these tours of the world to go like learn how to cook with like indigenous cultures. And I think
Mm.
that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like you said, it's a spectrum. You really have to broaden your way of going about things if you want to even come close to that
Yeah.
degree. But because there's always something new to learn,
Mm-hmm.
you'll never have that true sense of like one-to-one perfection with the subject. Um, but in a personal sense, I think it comes down to that idea again of like experience what you've gone through and how you're able to look at the world around you now. Because sure, while Gordon Ramsay has something new to learn,
Yeah.
I don't think there's another individual in the food industry aside from like Wolfgang Puck who like cannot deny that he's an expert in his field. I think after a while you become so knowledgeable that you have to become the societal standard as
Mm.
our new definition of expert.
Yeah. I like that. That makes me think. I once, when I was working in the BAM program, the Becoming a Man program, we took young men from Michelle Clark on the west side. We took them to visit. To visit the CEO at the time. I think it was like the CEO or CFO of Uber, and it was a African American woman. And I remember I brought some pretty astute students, and one of them, Malik, he was kind of a poet and a deep thinker, and he looked at her. I said, "Does anybody have any questions for her?" And he looked at her. He said, he was black himself, and he said he looked at her and he said, "How do you define black excellence?"
Hmm.
And at the time, I guess it was kind of a tick. I don't know. TikTok wasn't even around back then, but it was kind of a meme, to especially in the African American community to talk about black excellence in particular. I guess I had never heard that, and so I kind of looked into it and found out that it was kind of a thing where they were trying to carve out a niche, trying to look at excellence rather than being like, the opposite of complaining about oppression. They were actually the counter positive of that, to look at what does it mean to be excellent as a race, I guess, So that makes me think, so maybe the right word isn't expertise. Maybe the right word is excellence. Maybe we should just shoot for excellence rather than expertise. Where do those two sort of overlap, or are they the same thing?
I think in the human capacity, they may as well be the same thing. I
Mm.
mean, I don't think Gordon Ramsay is cooking anyone a bad meal. And to that end, what's the
Mm.
difference? Once you
Mhm.
remove the inability, like the ability to fail, I think that's if you're successful 99.9% of the time, then yeah, I don't think there's much of a difference in the human sense. Maybe there's still things you can learn and things you're not good at, but if you can keep replicating your successful formula, then yeah, that's expertise right there.
That's I heard one of those little memes. Is my life dominated by memes? But I heard a little heard a little thing the other day. Of course, the answer is yes. But that oh, what was it? It said amateurs work until they so it's like, maybe it was like basketball. Amateurs work until they make it, or something like that. They practice until they make it. It said experts work, or professionals or something like that, work until they can't miss. So and I thought that was pretty interesting. I got to go back and see what the exact verbiage is there, but exactly what you're talking about. It's like maybe expertise and is being excellent to the point of not that you can get it. Yes, got it. And I got it in a regular basis, but instead it's like, oh, I can't miss. I try as hard
Mhm.
as I can. It just flows out of me, type thing.
I mean, even for me going on into my adult life now, I'm aiming to be an electrician's apprentice. There's going to be an entire new world that I have to put myself into, of which I'm fairly inexperienced, but that's going to be something, I strive every day of my life from once I get into that program until the day I retire, and then probably even after that, just to really hone my skill. And not to bring it back to the college argument, but that's why I'm looking to trade school and not college, is that I want to expose myself to something that I can take and do with my own two hands. Whereas, and once I have that skill, it's mine. It's not just a piece of
Mm,
paper framed on my wall.
that's huge. I love that. Once you learn it and become proficient in it, it's yours. Yeah. Whereas like a philosophy degree, it's like, it's all of ours. In fact, who knows who? Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's really good. That's really good. Like a trade gives you almost something tangible. It gives you, um, it's yours because you can prove it with just doing it, fixing it. There's something about it's like in psychology. I went into psychology. Somebody says, "Well, prove that you're a psychologist." Well, here's a piece of paper. Okay, but prove it.
Mhm.
Um, how did you get along with your mom? And it's like, no. But if somebody says, "Hey, are you an electrician?" Yeah, prove it. Okay. You know, lights are out. Boom, boom, boom. Do this, this, this. They're done. It's yours.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, actually, I had before I did RambleSource, I did not a show, and I met with I interviewed and talked to a good friend of mine. He comes on RambleSource. His name is Josh Blackburn. We talked about craft, honing your craft, and the different kinds of crafts, and we got into that a little bit. The glory of having a craft that you can see the results,
Mhm.
and that I love that. When I'm done with being an apprentice, I will own it. And that's good. That's another little piece to honing your craft and expertise. Well, this has been a really, really good talk. I appreciate your insight. And like I said, I'm just blown away by how much you have grown. I mean, you've always been a genius, but how you've grown to like express that in your own way. I really appreciate that. And
Well, thank you for
hopefully
having
we
me,
can.
and it's always good to
Yeah,
hear from you and, bounce ideas off of each other.
absolutely. And maybe we can do a collab on doing some kind of like a stop motion or something.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Maybe you could help me fix my intro. So my intro is just like I just went on. Have you heard of Railway.ai? Is it Railway?
There's so many of those different programs now. I know Bing just like came out with one that a lot of people are using,
Yeah,
but I have no idea. AI is an entire another
that's another
issue to
subject.
be handled.
That's
AI and expertise, where do we stand?
can AI be expert? Yeah. Um, I think. Oh yes, I was saying that. Yeah, I just put in. I described what the the source of the ramble. In the the picture I have in the background here was my original back in 2010. I think before I met you, I started on RambleSource, and this was the original picture. I tried to describe that as like, I don't know, some kind of dystopian factory that, instead of pushing out pollution, pushes out like a delicious source of water, but that's really got nothing. But anyways, I had the for the intro, I just sort of put it in like word form. It spit out something that was a little wonky, but I liked it.
I think especially for RambleSource, in like an artistic sense, almost an AI generated intro works because you're getting the rambling of the AI, and that's why it's
Mm,
wonky.
I like that. I'm going with that. If anybody criticizes it, I already had one of my friends like saying it looked like some kind of acid trip or something. I can't remember. All right. Well, we all got to get on with our day, and I try to keep these to about 30 minutes. But I've really enjoyed talking to you and reconnecting with you, Aiden. Hopefully, we can do it again soon.
Likewise, of course, I'd be happy.
All right. Well, I will taco to you later, brother.
Talk to you soon. Take
All
care.
right. Take care.